They say a win is a win in the SEC, but not all wins are equal, which is why we are probably going to sound negative at times about Tennessee securing a 10-point victory over Kentucky. Welcome on into the SEC Unfiltered postgame show. He's Dave Shumate. I'm Cole Thompson, breaking down everything that we saw at Rocky Top tonight as the Volunteers roll to a 28-18 victory over the Wildcats. Real quickly, make sure that you like the video, hit that ring notification, and smash the subscribe button down below because we're talking college football, SEC content every single day. And when you hit that ring notification, you get reminded of every show that we have on the channel. Post-game reactions, live reactions, Dave Talk Ball, Sunday Fun Day, Chris Phillips Monday Morning Power Hour. Guys, starting on Tuesday, and I'm going to announce this now because if I don't think that we are hiding anything, we're going to do live reactions to the college football playoff rankings. So make sure that you are dialed on in by hitting that subscribe and the ring notification. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Follow us on the socials, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at SEC Unfiltered. Follow Dave at Mach 10 Sports, me and Mr. Cole Thompson, and check out all of our great work found at secunfiltered.com. This postgame show is brought to you by our friends over at RHOBACK. Go to RHOBACK.com, use the promo code SECU for 20% off your first purchase. Whether it be joggers, polos, hoodies, shorts, pullovers, fall foliage, whatever you need to close out the month of November. And just a reminder, people, Christmas is right around the corner. What better gift to give those that you love than a RHOBACK pullover or whatever you see from RHOBACK? Go to RHOBACK.com and use that promo code SECU, 20% off. Tell them that the fine folks over at SEC Unfiltered sent you. David, was a 10-point win, and honestly, at the beginning of the year, I figured this might be a close call, but it was because I figured Kentucky was going to be better than advertised. There is still just a lot that is unknown about Tennessee. When they are at their peak, really solid team. Overall, a very balanced team. An overall performance that you can buy a lot of stock into. When they're down, I just don't know what to make of them. They truly feel, when I talk about South Carolina as the biggest wild card in a positive light, Tennessee is kind of starting to enter that territory of wild card in a negative.
No, you're right. I just feel like Tennessee never puts a complete game together, Cole. That's just kind of for a fan. Like, there were some pop. I thought Nico played one of his better games tonight. Some may think that's crazy by the offside. I thought he played pretty well tonight. His receivers didn't help him. Outside of Brew McCoy, they really have no consistent outside threat that they trust right now. I don't think Brazzell stepped up to be that guy they thought he'd be. Thornton's kind of taking that step back, but he's a little banged up. Same with Squirrel White. Seemed to be getting it done on the ground a little bit. Defense probably played one. Again, continued to hold another SEC opponent to under 20 points. But I think they would probably tell you, Tim Banks and them, like, hey, look, from our goals each week, from like, hey, what we want to be on third down, rushing numbers, that every college football team, when you go into these defensive, offensive stat meeting rooms, they have their goals they want to check off each week. They preset it. I could see Tennessee really, if you really go ask Tim Banks, them not living up, and Rodney Gardner living up to their ultimate goal. Like 168 yards on the ground to Kentucky for an average of 4.5 yards a carry was probably not on their goal sheet defensively. So I think this is one of their games. But again, being nitpicky as hell. I mean, this is a championship level defense Tennessee's playing with. But I just feel like it was a game that you're kind of like, they didn't really bring their best effort today for whatever reason. Like, it wasn't bad, but I mean, they gave up 18 points. Again, they haven't given up more than 20 points to an SEC team this year. That's impressive as hell. They have a championship level defense. Just at some point, Cole, we got to start asking ourselves. I think this team is just offensively so inconsistent. It's either Nico's not playing up to standard, but, Dylan Sampson in the run game and them are. Or, the offensive line didn't play great. Oh, wait, Nico's playing pretty well tonight, but the receivers aren't helping him. It's just, I don't know, dude. We're getting late in the season. Is that just who we should just come to expect offensively? I'm leaning towards just, at this point. You are who you are this late in the year.
And I think the other thing that's really important here is that we still believe that Tennessee can run the table, make it to the college football playoff at 11-1, and maybe go to Atlanta and win a conference title. I mean,
Cole, let's be honest here. I think the SEC championship game's set. I think the winner of Georgia-Tennessee will face the winner of Texas A&M.
At this point, it's not shocking. I mean, there still is the one scenario where potentially LSU sneaks their way in if somehow Texas were to lose to, say, Arkansas, and then Texas A&M beats it. Like,
bearing some real upsets. That's what
there's
it
a
looks
lot.
like it's shaping up to be.
But
Yeah.
still, we kind of have a good indication about where people are. But at the same time, with all this parity in college football, we kind of got some things figured out today to where multiple SEC teams and even teams that lost or played too close for comfort today can probably punch their ticket. You know, with Pitt losing, with Clemson losing, with Iowa State losing, with Kansas State losing, it does feel like that it's opening up more doors for the SEC to get better representation in the dozen dance. And Tennessee, the way they have played defensively, the way they still are running the football, they feel like a team that when you get their best punch, when they're not playing down to the level of competition, they are going to be a threat to win it all. And again, a 10-point win in the SEC, regardless if you're at home or away, regardless if you're wearing the Venom blackout jerseys, whatever you see fit, the symbiote outlook, you're doing your job and you're still winning football games. But with that being said, there's still so many questions that I have. Defensively, they did a really good job after allowing a 7-0 lead to kind of keep this thing very close. They never allowed them to kind of take advantage of this game. Brock Vandagriff leaves, Barian Brown leaves, but Gavin Wimsatt steps on up. Fourth quarter, Jamori Macklin with a 32-yard touchdown. But Dylan Sampson finds a way to be able to regroup. He gets a 6-yard score, pulls away with the lead once again to get 28-18. I just look at where Tennessee played tonight, and they have a bye week to be able to regroup and reassess and kind of look at the intricacies of what went wrong for them at times against Alabama, but more importantly, what went right for them and what went wrong last week playing against an Auburn team, against Kentucky, that gave up over 278 rushing yards to one play. And it just felt like they never gained a consistent balance on that side of the ball. Nico wasn't terrible. I mean, again, he's a freshman that we kind of oversaturated to be the second coming of Peyton Manning, but probably should have said, if he plays at the same level as Joe Milton, if we get a good ground game headlined by Dylan Sampson, if we're not turning the football over and our defense balls out, that might be good enough. We put him on this pedestal. He has not lived up to expectations, but that does not mean that he is a bad player. He still is growing into his own. Didn't look terrible. Looked overall solid. Solid might be good enough, but there just felt like there was a disconnect at some point between the wide receivers. And don't get me wrong, you brought this up, and I'll agree. Multiple drop passes tonight. A really overall decent game. Like when I look back at that game against Arkansas, when I look back at that game against Alabama, there were multiple times where Nico just didn't feel comfortable. It felt like Nico was allowing opponents to stick around. Where in this game, it felt like wide receivers were letting him down. It felt like they were the ones that were making the mistakes, and he was putting the ball in the right place. There was a clear disconnect between the passing attack with wide receivers and number 8.
No, you're right. What was it? 28 for 38 tonight, 292, a touchdown. And we talked about the drop, Chris Brazzell dropping that one in there. I mean, it wouldn't have been an easy catch, but at this level, with your quarterback struggling like he has a little bit, you need to help him out and make that grab. I think even Chris Brazzell will probably tell you that was a catch. That was a ball he should have had. For whatever reason, it just seems Nico and the outside guys cannot get on the same page. It seems like the tight ends, you talk about going off the bye week.
Well, right. Miles Kitselman had a really good game tonight.
Yes, and I like how they're using Stays, Ethan Davis. I don't know. I think they're trying to, with Squirrel White being out, I could see them formationing more matchups with guys like Ethan Davis against a linebacker that he's more athletic than, or if you want to use your nickel, he can just go out physical him. That's something maybe to watch out for Tennessee maybe as we continue throughout kind of the back third of the season here as they start heading in to play Georgia here in a couple of weeks, and then obviously Vanderbilt in the year.
But let me ask you, when you look right now at the wide receiver spot, Chris Brazzell had a couple drops. For McCoy, wasn't, and he's really feels like maybe the only
consistent guy. Yeah.
Dante Thornton, when you look at his numbers this year, why not get Mike Matthews more involved? But that's what I'm saying. Like, if he's banged up, why not get Mike Matthews more involved? Again, this is a player that when you talk to people around the building and how he looked throughout the entire spring and fall camp, around the entire fall camp, there was a lot of potential for him to be that breakout guy. And I'm just like wondering, tonight, a game where nobody is really kind of showing up, why not let's just see what he has? Because if it does feel like when you go down the stretch and you have to play against a team like Georgia, when you have to play against a team like Vanderbilt, don't you want to feel more comfortable in having that secondary weapon and not just be a tight end? Because right now the tight ends are probably the second best bet. It's Brew McCoy and then it's Miles Kitselman. You want to be able to have that secondary punch.
Yeah, No, I 100% agree there. Again, especially with Squirrel White being out, they need that inside receiver threat, and it's not going to be an explosive guy like Squirrel. I think they're going to go try to get those second level mismatches against linebackers. It seemed this week reading some practice reports. What do you think about Kentucky, Cole? I mean,
look, okay, Kentucky is who they are. Like, Kentucky is who they are at this point. They're sitting currently with 6 losses on the year. They found a way to lose last week to a very underwhelming Auburn squad that finally found its identity on offense when it came to running the football. And it just never felt like they got comfortable. Losing Brock Vandagriff, losing Barry Brown was a big deal. You know, you still had some momentum going into the third quarter when you had to turn to Wimsatt, when you lost probably your best weapon. Dane Key stepped on up. He had a pretty solid day. Jamoy Macklin had 1 catch, but that 1 catch was for a 32-yard score. Like, you know what's going to work and what's not for Kentucky at this point. But defensively, they did a good job of pressuring Nico Iamaleava to throw. And again, he was probably the one person that did show up and show at least promise tonight. But at the same time, he had a couple passes that were a little bit overshot. He had a couple passes that were probably rushed. It just felt like that because of the way that you were able to also eliminate the run game. Like Dylan Sampson, he made history. I mean, he got yet again a 2-touchdown performance, and he rushed for 142 yards. But he took 27 carries to get there. And it really felt like by the fourth quarter, oh, we're just gas. We're out of breath. We don't have enough left in the tank to be able to pull off this upset on the road. If this is at Kroger Field and we have the fans behind us, maybe we'll be able to pull this one off. But going to Neyland, going after losing in sporadic fashion last week against a really, 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 really underwhelming Auburn squad, I think you just lost the juice. Like if you told me that this is how the game went, I would say it's because of Kentucky didn't show up in the fourth quarter. And for the most part, Kentucky did. But they were also down some players in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, you could tell Stoops at halftime in that interview. He was like, we're up right now, but guys, second half's going to be grueling. We're just beat to hell. You're right. It kind of just – Kentucky is what it is this year right now. It's just kind of like they never got off the bus from the big Ole Miss win. In games like tonight, you're fine with. I mean, shoot, if they would have won 1 or 2 of those 3 games against Vanderbilt, Auburn, and Florida,
yeah,
two of
and
them,
didn't lose
different,
and also didn't lose in sporadic fashion against
Florida.
And
DJ Lagway, great player, but in his first start, you let that offense go for 41 points on you. That's a little tough to swallow if you're a Kentucky fan, traditionally used to seeing a really good Brad White.
You also let a young running back be the one to beat you.
Go for 5 touchdowns on you. Yeah, you're right. Like, it was like, all right. Like you said, you let Auburn get their first conference win against you at home. It's kind of like, geez, dude. I mean, and to be fair, I mean, Vanderbilt's a good football team this year, so that's a loss, but you even had them in a decent spot. But no, where do you go from here? I don't think they get to 6, Cole. You may disagree with me, but I don't think they get to 6. Do you?
Well, look at their schedule. Louisville, they just got the biggest win of the season for them. Absolutely. They still have games against Texas. Probably not going to win that one. Murray State. So 6 is possible because they have played Louisville well. But if they don't beat Louisville, then no, they're going to go 5-7 this year. And it does feel like that maybe, I'm not saying the writing is on the wall for Mark Stoops, but it does feel like at some point you kind of reached a crossroads of this is as good as it's going to get. This is as good as it can be. And so
I don't see him winning both Texas and Louisville.
But if he wins Louisville and loses Texas, but beats Murray State,
he's
that's
at
6.
5.
Hold on.
They're 3-6 right now with 3 left.
Oh, never mind. Yeah.
They got to win out. They got to beat Murray State, win at Texas, and beat Louisville.
I didn't even realize that. I thought there were 4.
Because they're on a bye. They got a late bye week, man. They're on a bye week this week, upcoming week.
So, yeah. No. I mean, probably not. Yeah. I mean, and what's so mind-boggling is that when you looked at Kentucky, they were probably one of the biggest teams to where you didn't know how to prepare for it, but sleeper would have made a lot of sense. Bringing a quarterback that last year pushed Carson Beck, a dude who was a couple plays away from going to the college football playoff to the brink. They brought in a really good linebacker, and Jamon Dumas-Johnson had a solid defensive front 7. They had a really good secondary. They had a overall decent wide receiver core, probably the most underrated wide receiver core. They went out and they brought in a new offensive coordinator that was a good fit on paper for how they want to run Vandagriff. It was a very underwhelming year, and it does feel like that you've kind of reached your elements and your peak when it comes to Mark Stoops, and it just feels like, again, There's so many
Ran its
games.
course.
But it's not just that. It's like the game against Georgia, it just still sits in the back of my mind because of you showed that ability to drop your nuts and not be afraid to swing for it against a team like Ole Miss.
Well, dude, to me, it's not even the Georgia games. It's like you had 3 very winnable games after the bye week, after beating Ole Miss, where it's like, man, dude, you could really springboard your season here to an 8-win season, and you go 0 for 3. I mean, I know.
Well, it's not, and the problem is, it's not even that. They had 2 games where they just looked completely lost for the entire matchup.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, you had numerous opportunities to springboard that Ole Miss win, and you just haven't. Like, it was just like the season ended then, and I think it's just kind of, there's a lot of built-up resentment, I think, between Mark Stoops and that athletics department right now and them towards him, too. I just think it's just kind of like all right, somebody's just going to drop the rope here at some point.
Well, when you also think about it, this was a guy that did feel like he was about ready to leave for College Station, Texas.
Yeah, he already had his bags packed, and they shut the door on him.
When you look at Tennessee at this point, you still have a great run game. Dylan Sampson made Tennessee football history tonight. He now leads the team in the most rushing touchdowns. And potentially, if he can continue to get this momentum going, there is a deep shot, very deep shot, but still a shot for him to go ahead and make it in New York City as the representative for Tennessee in the Heisman Trophy race. He certainly is going to be in the running for the Doak Walker. You have a defense. You have a very good defense. And you have seen in sporadic fashion this year, Nico Iamaleava live up to expectations as a passer. If they're able to get to 80% of what we have seen from this offense this year, whether it be with the ground game, whether it be with the consistency with tight ends, whether it be a Dante Thornton stepping on up, whether it be with a Squirrel White coming back at full capacity, are they still a college football playoff threat? Because tonight it didn't feel like it, but at the same time, I'm okay with it not feeling it.
Yeah, I mean, threat, but I think the real conversation here, Cole, is that I think legitimately when you kind of work out these numbers, you're looking at schedules across the country, I think Tennessee's definitely a threat for sure. I mean, they went out, they're in. I mean, they probably played in Atlanta. But if they go 10-2, drop it to Georgia, Tennessee's that team potentially. Again, I know they would have a head-to-head over Alabama, but like, what's Tennessee's second best win after Alabama? Is it Florida or Kentucky?
Or NC State, depending on how.
It's like if Ole Miss goes 10-2, and it's Tennessee and Ole Miss, I put Ole Miss. I mean, Ole Miss has a better win against South Carolina. Is a way better second win than anything Tennessee has. And then you have at Arkansas, much better. I mean, who Tennessee lost to.
But also think about this, Dave, that we haven't brought up yet. If they have a second loss, that's probably to Georgia.
Yeah.
And if Ole Miss is a second loss,
Georgia the week
they would have beaten Georgia.
That's what I'm saying. Ole Miss 10-2 gets in before Tennessee. I mean, I'll argue this. If Alabama were to win next week, I know Tennessee beat Alabama head-to-head, but resume, I think Alabama has a way better resume than Tennessee has with those 2 wins.
The problem is that we have to start looking at head-to-head so they matter.
No. I don't know how you can give them the neither. I mean, if you're Tennessee, you continue to cheer for Alabama. You want that win to keep looking as good as possible where we beat these guys. Because, again, you would assume, and like you mentioned, Cole, when we do our live reaction for the college football playoff, reveal on Tuesday night, same night as an election night. But
which is more important for us actually than it is for anything else in the country.
It will be interesting to see where they place Tennessee and Alabama going to next week. But again, I mean, as we know, Alabama or LSU's out next week, no matter what.
I say one of these is a moot point because it's.
What do you think? Who do you think gets in here, Cole? 10-2 LSU, 10-2 Tennessee. I think LSU.
Well, who would be okay? So their losses would be to A&M and USC. The losses for Tennessee would be to Arkansas and Georgia.
Wins.
The signature LSU win
would be what they both have wins over Bama.
Oh, and then LSU because they would have a top 10 win against an Ole Miss squad.
And I think thinking about this too, Cole. I think you'll appreciate this because I think you're a big supporter of them and they love you, dude. For teams like Alabama and LSU, that South Carolina game starting to look better on the resume than I think people think when the season. If South Carolina keeps winning and wins 8-9 games, that's going to be a second or third best win for some of these teams.
Of course it is. Well, and the more important part is that you watch as South Carolina has continued to play up to a certain standard, and they just weren't able to close out the job. Where other teams, they looked awful. I mean, that one win for Arkansas feels like a mile away the way they play today for 4 quarters. That's the problem at this point. So that's what you have to kind of take into consideration. But I still believe that Tennessee, again, they play up to a certain standard. The version that we know of Tennessee, they absolutely are going to be able to go 11-1 and control their destiny to the college football playoff. And 11-1 Tennessee with that big script T, that's not being left out. Like, that box T is going to carry a lot of weight. And more importantly, Nico Iamaleava and that defense has earned its right to be in the college football playoff. But they still have to go 10-2. They have to have chaos happen in other conferences. The good news is you had a little bit of help today. SMU beating Pitt. Louisville finding a way to get the job done against Clemson. Houston beating K-State. Texas Tech beating Iowa State. It's now opened the opportunities to where if more teams in the Big Ten start losing and you do your job, you will have the strength of resume and the strength of record to be able to punch your ticket to the dozen dance.
No, totally agree, Cole. No, yeah, I think Tennessee's in the 10. I mean, you're right, though. It's just what off it. You're just waiting for it to just come on at some point. I'm just literally, I don't know. When I go to bed at night, I think I'm just going to be like, I've accepted it. Maybe some Tennessee fans are like, what's this guy been waiting on for so long? I've accepted it weeks ago. But for the offense, I'm just like, I just don't think it's ever going to come together. The only consistent is Dylan Sampson in the run game at times. But I don't think that's going to carry you to a championship, unfortunately. But again, I thought Nico took some steps tonight. I thought he played well. It's just receivers didn't help him. And there's always something I feel like going on with Tennessee's offense to not allow them to ultimately hit their ceiling.
Like, rate, review, subscribe. Make sure that you're following us on the social channels. Dave, myself, and Chris Phillips will be back tomorrow morning for Sunday Fun Day. Make sure that also you're following us on the socials, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at SEC Unfiltered. Follow Dave at Mock 10 Sports and me at Mr. Cole Thompson. Download the podcast version of the show and check out all of our great work found at SECUnfiltered.com. Tennessee, Rocky Top rolls, 10-point victory. Dylan Sampson continues his quest for setting records in Knoxville. And unfortunately for Kentucky fans, well, you got to win out. And that's a lot easier said than done. But for Dave Shumate, I'm Cole Thompson. We'll be back tomorrow morning. Peace.